Thank you very much, Alam. I really appreciate the privilege and opportunity to be here today with the potential challenge of acquainting quite a large group and a very broad range of folk about this whole area of game-based learning. Joe and I have been working together for a period of time, and both Joe and I have recently decided that it's great to let the world know a little bit more about our books. Hold on. Now, the first thing I just want to expose everyone to is text instead of a graphic. I mean, one of the interesting challenges I and my co-author had is how do we get people to learn about gamification and game-based learning while at the same time making sure that we provide them an actual experience. So our book is about games, simulations, serious games, immersive learning environments. And we've tried to cover a very broad range of cases where games have been either used in the classroom or in training in corporate environments or as part of the onboarding experience within corporate environments. And when Alam says, please, Michael, introduce yourself, I'm the fellow on the left-hand side. When I grew up, my whole life was one in which I spent a lot of time in the public library. And my co-author, who's on the right, was a very, very superbly known Madison Avenue salesperson. Now, I was the type of person people called a nerd, simply because I would spend hours in the library and I would learn all about a number of games like Stratego, diplomacy, a wide range of games, chess, Go, in which I spent my life immersed in that type of mental environment. And then one of the critical success factors Kevin Allen and I identified was this whole area of emotional intelligence. I mean, one element in emotional intelligence is the capability to make sure the emotions can make your thoughts more intelligent. I mean, it is called emotional intelligence, and that a person can think intelligently about emotions. This has always been a challenge for folks, is that when we are dealing with leadership, teamship, communityship, communications, is the most intelligent person in the room the best person to lead? Often that is not the case because they do not have the skill set to perceive, express, or regulate their emotions. There are a number of theories behind emotional intelligence, and I really want to emphasize that I'm actually a scholarly practitioner, not a pure academic. I spent the first 30 years of my life as an entrepreneur and a business person, setting up corporations and knowledge centers across the world. Goldman has a particular theory that suggests that almost 90% of the skills needed for success are emotional and social. So it's really about people and relationships. Myers-Salavi also has a particular theory and model about perceiving, understanding, managing emotions to facilitate thinking. One of my favorites is Baron's work. We used Baron in many of my MBA classes to provide the capability for learners to take a emotional quotient inventory assessment and then be provided with an outline of the particular social skills, non-cognitive skills, or competencies that are really important for them to develop. So the book was built on a framework of quests. We created quests within the book so that people would have a way to navigate through the book that really follows what normally takes place in gamification. Was a unique approach. So we have a number of challenges, particular missions for them to achieve in order to navigate through the book itself. But one of the underlying conceptual frameworks for game-based learning is what's called the flow concept. And this is where you balance boredom and anxiety in order to push individuals who are involved in a simulation or a serious game to achieve flow. Flow is a well-known psychological concept, and I've been involved in delivering many games, entrepreneurship games, leadership games, teamship games, in which we attempt to achieve flow with the participants so they lose track of time and they are in what's called the zone. Many of you have probably experienced the zone when you were involved in particular activities. That's where you are just so immersed in it that everything around you disappears. So we try to balance skills that individuals need to exhibit with the challenges for them to exhibit those skills. From a business value proposition, I'm not trying to sell my book, but I really want to emphasize that two of the critical success factors we had in mind when we published was to make sure people had reliable assessment tools that they could use either in training or in the classroom to be able to assess that learning takes place with serious games, role-playing games, simulations, or immersive learning environments such as Second Life. In addition to that, we created and documented a number of case studies that demonstrate best practices as well as worst practices for using gamification. For example, one of the challenges we run into in many corporations is that they say, oh, we're going to gamify an environment. Oh, really? Okay. Who exactly are you going to assign to do this? Oh, well, Joe isn't doing anything right now. Does Joe have a sense of humor? I don't mean Joe, my co-presenter today, but just the general Joe. And often I hear, well, he's not exactly the funniest guy, or he really doesn't know what fun and play is about, but he's the only resource we have to gamify the environment. Well, that's your worst case scenario. It will fail miserably. Our goal was to expose instructors and trainers to this whole area of experientially based simulations and serious games, and to be able to evaluate, develop customized coaching plans for each learner who participates in games. For example, Fligby, which is a game actually developed by Csikszentmihalyi, the author of Flow, in which leaders are continually challenged with about 200 decision points in a simulation that takes between 7 and 9 hours to complete. That's correct. You heard that. 7 to 9 hours. Now, let me just bring up for a second the assessment model that the authors of that game have had, and you get a feel for exactly what I'm speaking of. This is the cells that are assessed during this big range of decision making that takes place. And during that, the individuals have to work with other team members and demonstrate leadership capabilities to be able to win at the game. The game is really how to manage a company in very turbulent times. And the individuals are continually provided feedback from an avatar called Mr. Fligby, who challenges them to make sure that the organization continues to exhibit flow. So let me go back to my original slides for a second. So really, to wrap up a bit, there's a major quest, the book outlines, major set of quests, missions, goals, and an individual who gets through the book will have an excellent idea of either how to build or buy a particular serious game or simulation, how to deliver it, how to get buy-in from your sponsors. We've run across this a number of times in universities where a dean will say, well, the students, the learners are having too much fun. How is it they can learn when they're having fun or playing? And we use assessment tools that demonstrate specifically that the individuals have acquired new knowledge and can definitely share that knowledge with others in the group. So I'm going to wrap up and turn this over now to my colleague, Joe Biz, on his book. Thank you.
How your book is written, in a way, is it the same engaging, or the I mean, how is it engaging with the, how different is it from the normal books we use in public or in our universities, or how different is it is? And the second question is, who is it for? Again, the same question, is it for under, postgraduate? Before I can open.
Well, to answer the first question, looks like we have a number of people crashing in via Facebook. There we go. To answer the first question, I had outlined this idea that our book creates quests and missions to be achieved by the reader. Okay. So it forces the individual reading the book to go off on a number of missions and do things and to come back. So it's not just a passive book about reading about experiential education or games and simulations. The reader actually has to achieve a number of to complete a number of activities. And so our goal was to identify an audience that could start to learn by reading the book about what this field was about. We actually had a very broad audience, everyone from chief learning officers to training instructors in corporations, professors, instructional designers. So our goal was to give a number of these individuals an opportunity to see what game-based learning was about by doing activities that are part of the book.
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.